13 bells for the 13 original colonies.
That's great.
That's pretty cool.
That's great.
That's cool. So, welcome fellow townspeople, friends, and neighbors to an hour of celebration and camaraderie of the 250th anniversary of our nation's Declaration of Independence. I'm Kelly Bixby-Gervais, delighted to announce that Orange is about to join fellow municipalities throughout the Commonwealth in simultaneous readings of the Declaration, to be delivered for our town by Anne Reid, followed by a brief historic note from Chris Woodcock. Afterward, the community band will perform a repertoire of patriotic favorites as the ice cream truck stands at the ready to serve up some favorites of its own. But first, thanks for lending your respectful attention to the formal portion of our program, which will now commence with the Pledge of Allegiance and the singing of our national anthem, led by Julie Capone Bouchard and the community band. Please rise, remove all hats, and face our flag, please.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and broad stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With liberty and justice for all. Now I please ask that everybody join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With liberty and justice for all.
Just beautiful. Adam and Julie and our wonderful, wonderful, many generations old community band. I'm Anne Reed, and I must share with you that as a descendant of multiple revolutionary patriots known to have boldly fought for the independence of our nation, and also as a descendant of some of their Mayflower predecessors in the cause, I am so honored to be serving as reader for Orange. When word of the signing of the Declaration of Independence reached the settlement of Orange in the summer of 1776, dancing in the streets ensued. At least considerable bustle on the one main street known to exist at that time, the very north to south stretch nearby which we gather today. Printed copies of the freshly inked document were being distributed throughout the colonies via post riders. Dispatched from Philadelphia, news of the Declaration's signing had taken nearly 2 weeks to reach Boston, and so a bit longer to reach Orange. Church bells pealed in the distance. The Provincial Congress of Massachusetts had compelled local ministers throughout the land to read the text aloud from their pulpits, after which copies were committed to municipal files. Royal symbols were at last yanked off their fixtures, and pewter tankards and wooden noggins were raised in celebration. Many of Orange's settlers had directly descended from America's earliest settlers, who some 6 generations earlier had arrived from England on the Mayflower in brave and stalwart pursuit of freedom from royal tyranny. And now a reading of the Declaration. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted, among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for the future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation until his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for the purpose of obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and for the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. For suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Georgia, Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, George Walton. North Carolina, William Hooper, Joseph Hughes, John Penn. South Carolina, Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., Thomas Lynch Jr., Arthur Middleton. Massachusetts, John Hancock. Maryland, Samuel Chase, William Paca, Thomas Stone, Charles Carroll of Carrollton. Virginia, George Wythe, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lightfoot Lee, Carter Braxton. Pennsylvania, Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Benjamin Franklin, John Morton, George Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, George Ross. Delaware, Caesar Rodney, George Reed, Thomas McKean. New York, William Floyd, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, Lewis Morris. New Jersey, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkinson, John Hart, Abraham Clark. New Hampshire, Josiah Bartlett, William Whipple. Massachusetts, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Treat Payne, Elbridge Gerry. Rhode Island, Stephen Hopkins, William Ellery. Connecticut, Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams, Oliver Walcott. New Hampshire, Matthew Thornton. And now, Chris Woodcock will share with us some historic notes of special value to the people of Orange.
Good evening. The Declaration of Independence that Anne Reed so passionately recited was conceived and written by some of this country's most famous and admired leaders. Thomas Jefferson was the primary author, with edits to his original draft coming from John Adams and Benjamin Franklin. As much as those founding fathers are respected and revered, we should never lose sight of an important fact regarding the American Revolution. It was regular, everyday people who stood up to fight for freedom and independence. It was everyday people who risked their lives in the quest to break free from the tyranny of British rule and established a new democratic republic. Before the armed conflict began, these folks had been living humble, ordinary lives as farmers, laborers, tradesmen, even teenagers. But what they did during the Revolution made them leaders in their own right. In committing themselves to a greater purpose, they altered the course of history. They shaped the events that have brought us together tonight to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our nation's beginnings. The tens of thousands of soldiers who fought so bravely from 1775 to 1783 in the American Revolutionary War came from all 13 of Britain's North American colonies. Massachusetts served as the epicenter of the rebellion and contributed more soldiers to the Continental Army than any other colony. And although it is not well known, some of those revolutionary patriots were early settlers from our own backyard, from right here in and around the territory that came to be known in 1810 as the town of Orange. The story of Revolutionary War service by local people is chronicled in A History of Orange, published in 1976 by the Orange Historical Society and written by Beatrice Minor, a longtime grade school teacher. According to that town history, 27 men from this area answered the call to serve in the military. Some fought in the war's earliest battles at Concord, Lexington, and Bunker Hill. 3 of the locals, Ichabod Dexter, Samuel Dexter, and Thomas Lord, were Revolutionary War captains. Another local soldier, Oliver Chapin, was a member of the elite hand-selected lifeguard unit that protected General George Washington. 15 of the local Revolutionary soldiers are buried in the North Orange Cemetery. Their names are worthy of mention here this evening. Elijah Johnson, Moses Cheney, Benjamin Porter, Amos Boyden, Sherebiah Baker, Stephen Mayo, Benjamin Mayo, Levi Cheney, Ebenezer Cheney, Silas Marble, Converse Ward, William Lord, Tyler Perry, Alexander Wheelock, and Samuel Moore. Some of those last names probably sound familiar. A number of present-day local families, including my own, are descendants of these courageous men. My paternal grandmother, Margaret Moore Woodcock, was the great-great-great-granddaughter of Revolutionary soldier Samuel Moore. My cousin John Moore III, a well-known Orange farmer, and his family are descended from that same Moore lineage, as is Denise Andrews of Orange and her family. This is but one example of how these familiar revolutionary surnames continue to resonate strength, character, and commitment in our local communities today. Here in July of 2026, it is not easy for any of us to fully appreciate the significance of this slice of local history from 2.5 centuries ago. To put it in perspective in my own mind, I recently visited the cemetery in North Orange that serves as the final resting place for these heroes from a bygone era. Just beyond the entrance to Orange's oldest cemetery, I see a monument dedicated by the town in 1951. Adorned with a symbolic bald eagle, it carries this simple message: in memory of the veterans of all wars. In the quiet solitude of a sunny June morning, a distinct sense of dignity, tranquility, and peace comes over me as I survey the ancient burial ground and the old statuesque pine trees that border it. The worn but venerable gravestones of Revolutionary War soldiers are scattered throughout the cemetery. The engraving on some of them is difficult or impossible to read, the names and dates eroded by the passage of time and the ravages of New England weather. But upliftingly, the spirit of these men endures. Amid the silence, I feel their presence, their strength, their willingness to stand up for what they believed in. And I am struck by the meaning of the lives they led and the impact of the contributions they made to the fight for freedom in the founding of our United States of America. The recounting of that personal experience at the cemetery leads me to this closing thought. As we join together to commemorate the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, let us also pause to remember, respect, and celebrate the local people of that time who fought in the American Revolutionary War. Just like Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin, they helped blaze the path to liberty and independence. They showed the way for all of us to pursue the American dream, for all the men and women who have made our country and our communities great. And they left us a legacy of service, sacrifice, and commitment that has been carried forward for generations in our beloved town of Orange, Massachusetts. Here's to those brave revolutionary patriots and to our country. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you. That was the Libertyville March by John Philip Sousa. We are the Orange Community Band. My name is Steph Parker, your director, and thank you to Kelly for inviting us to tonight's production. Also, Anne Reed did not get a proper round of applause for her declaration, reading of the declaration, so great job, Anne. Also Julie Bouchard and Adam Witten, who sang our pledge and our anthem. We have a handful of patriotic tunes to share with you tonight. We're going to start it off with an arrangement by Jay Bocook. This is Freedom. that last piece was a March in One Step by composer Henry Fillmore. That was our own Red, White, and Blue. Next up, we have a tune that is fairly new to us. This is called With Honor. The author of the composer writes, "This is a piece that resonates with an uplifting feeling of profound respect." During the performance, each phrase is written with expression to give all of us, those who have come before us, honor. Our next tune is a very familiar, older patriotic tune. I hope you enjoy the American Patrol. almost hear the parade going by in that last tune. The next few tunes that we have for you, it's not required, but audience participation, would be welcome. We have some sing-alongs for you next. The first one is Woody Guthrie's popular "This Land Is Your Land," so feel free to sing along if you would like to. Next we have one of the more famous pieces I think ever written and more familiar. This is Samuel Ward's America the Beautiful. Thank you again for inviting us to participate in this special occasion tonight. We are here every Friday throughout the rest of July at 7 p.m. for our regular Friday evening concerts, and this week is Animal Kingdom and Children's Night, so I hope you're able to join us. Like I said, this is America the Beautiful. left for you tonight. Our next one is, again, another very familiar tune made famous by Irving Berlin. This is God Bless America. So if you have ever been to an Orange Community Band concert before, at least in the last 10 years or so, you might know that it is pretty common for us to end our first half with a parade. So I figured, what better tune to swing our flags to, wave the flags to, and have a kids parade if they're up for it. They can come right around the bandstand right here. I know there's band kids out there that know how to do this. So this is the Stars and Stripes Forever. Thank you again. We are the Orange Community Band. Thank you again and happy birthday, America.